Hey everybody, I think most of you know now that I host an Emmy-nominated show called The American Dream. Well, in the last episode that I filmed, it's not out yet, I had the honor and privilege of interviewing Michael W. Smith. So we talked about lifestyle and culture down around Music Row and Christian music on that interview. But when the interview was over, I told him about you guys and how I do a series called Around Mount Juliet. And I said, would it be okay if maybe we talked a little bit more for that? And I'd like to ask you a few questions about your faith and just kind of how you've grown through the years. And Michael is all about it. So here's the interview. I don't know if you remember this, Michael. I know you had a lot of you've won Grammys, you've won Dove Awards, American Music Awards. Back I think you were in the midst of the mainstream success. I was at a meeting. I think it was at Belmont, and you came in and I think you just talked to us, and you said you were hearing that God told you it's time to be bold. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Can you explain kind of what you were hearing during that time?
Well, it was, I think it was coming out of this whole pop thing, when Place This World became a pop hit, and I found myself in circles that was really exciting, but also was dangerous a little bit, and you had to kind of keep your guard up a little bit. It wasn't a safe environment.
Right.
So, I always sort of took a lot of people with me going, I can't afford to fall, guys. Let's have some accountability here. But I think it all stemmed from something that happened in Louisiana, and I was doing this big star party. And they had it in the station was in Texas, but they had it in Louisiana because you could drink at 8 to serve alcohol at 18 and not 21 in Texas. So it's one of these big country clubs.
Sure.
And there were like thousands of kids in there. And they were all pretty looped. I mean, it was crazy. So I went in to sing. So I sang this ballad, and I had somebody threw a beer can at me and hit me in the shoulder. And I was just startled about what happened. And so I got really, I wanted to fight, honestly. I just want to go, who's this guy?
Yeah, sure.
So I was steaming. So then I went into Place in This World, and then everybody's like, oh, it's like everybody was happy, because it was the hit,
Right.
And I remember I walked off stage, and I was fuming, and I was just so upset about the whole thing. So I went out we're out in the country, really, it's kind of thing out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm outside sort of fuming a little bit, and I look in, there was these doors that were open, and you could see all these kids are out of control. And then it was like an epiphany. I heard the Lord say to me, he said, you see those people? He said, I love those people, and I want you to love them too.
Wow.
And then I broke down and started crying. And I went, he's right, Yeah. So it gave me maybe a sense of urgency to get out of my comfort zone and go, you know what, it's time for the world to see the real Jesus.
Sure.
Because a lot of times in very traditional upbringings and even churches, I think he's been misrepresented.
Absolutely.
A lot of people have been hurt by the church.
Yeah.
So I think that probably was one of the things that happened. There were probably lots of things that happened, but that was sort of the catalyst that sort of inspired me to write that book.
Right.
And the book's called It's Time to Be Bold.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, of course, the world's changed a lot since then.
It has changed a lot.
Do you have a message for Christians trying to find their place in this world right now?
I think there's so many things that are coming at us, and the internet can be a good thing, can be a very bad thing. I just always go, guys, what's the truth? And what's the truth do every time it sets you free? And I just remind people, guys, just look at the book. What's the book say? The book tells us how to live.
Right.
Very plain,
right.
And there's a lot of promises in that book.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember those promises and apply them to your life, you can get through. Not that it's going to be an easy life, but you can walk in strength, and you can walk with great joy, and have a great family, and be able to love on your community, and then heed the warning signs that the book tells you as well.
Sure.
When I'm talking about the book, I'm talking about the Word.
Absolutely.
And there's all these warnings, and you see in there in the last days, people will turn and they'll walk away, and all these things that's going to happen. Oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen to me.
Right.
And we're seeing that happen.
Right.
And so I read the book,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to memorize it, and I don't forget it.
Right. We see Isaiah 48, the grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever.
Stands forever.
Now, your song, Surrounded. I always think of Ephesians 6 when I listen to that. It's been pretty powerful in my life.
Yeah.
But I think that's something else we probably remember with this world is we're not wrestling with people. We're wrestling against principalities of the dark age.
It's spiritual warfare, really.
Yeah.
And we think it's all political, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, and they never talk about kind of what's going on up there.
Absolutely.
And if you read the Old Testament, Michael the Archangel and all the stuff that you read, all this stuff, go, wow, and we forget
Right.
that kind of stuff is going on. Yeah, so, the battle thing, the fight my battles, surround thing just kind of came out of nowhere. My producer introduced me to that song written by a girl from Texas, and boy, little did I know that whole thing would explode. And when I go
Right.
into it every night, it's like, because it's kind of become a battle song.
Oh, sure.
I think for people, this is how I fight my battles.
That's a good reminder to us.
It is.
Yeah, that's where the power is.
And even it doesn't look like it's happening. He said he'd never leave us or forsake us.
Right.
So yeah, so I think in the midst, especially both Waymaker and Surrounded, Fight My Battles, sort of landed kind of right in the middle of a pandemic, you know, and so I think both those songs have been sort of a war cry and something for people to kind of anchor their lives in, and I think it's really helped.
Sure. And something you said a minute ago, even when you don't see him working, he's working. Of course, Waymaker, you got that.
Yeah.
I prayed for my dad for over 30 years to test Christ in his life, and I thought God was doing nothing, and I was able to lead him to the Lord right at the end.
Wow.
And it's a cool story. I won't go into it now, but at his funeral, I had man after man come to me and tell me how they were sharing Christ with my dad, and I always think about that. Even when you don't see him working, he's working.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's doing behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
We don't see.
Yeah.
And his timetable is different than our timetable. We think, and then it's crazy. I mean, it's a mystery. I mean, I have a lot of questions for God, and I think that's okay. I've been going, we prayed for that guy or that girl and she got healed, and that person didn't get healed, and or we prayed for that person, but it took 30 years or 40 years, and all of a sudden you're seeing it. So, no, I think it's the Waymaker and Fight My Battles sort of landed at a kind of really in the middle of a pandemic. It was kind of their war song, something to hang on to, And then there's so many things we don't understand, but God, where are you?
Right.
Pray for that person to get healed. Pray for that person they don't get healed. Where you pray for that person, it takes years for something to happen. So his timeline is different than our timeline, and you just have to trust that.
Right.
All right, God, you say you're holding it all together, and you just have to trust Him through the process, even as the song says.
Yeah.
Even if I don't feel it or see it, I'm going to trust you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Of course, there have been other songs that have, friends. A lot of people have shed tears over friends over the years, but I just appreciate all you've done so much. Recently, you did a movie. My friend Ben Graham owns Graham Family Films here in Mount Juliet. Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about that? Pardoned by Grace.
Yeah, I played Pastor Dave, who is Scott's pastor. Scott is a guy who has a prison ministry, who was arrested, I think, 32, 33 times. I might get the numbers wrong. He spent a lot of time in jail. He just had a very, very traumatic childhood, and was just a rough character, And it took forever, and then all of a sudden he has an encounter with the Lord, and everything changes, know. But Pastor Dave had a very important role in his life, especially when it came to grace.
Sure.
And I think Scott had dealt with so much shame, and go, how can I do this? Look at all the stuff I've done, And I could say the same for me,
Absolutely.
as Michael W. said. But it's just like, hey man, There's been some rough characters in the Bible. A lot of people, His grace is sufficient, And so to build,
and He meets us where we are.
He does, and in the movie, I'm just going, the grace thing finally clicks. Well, Scotty finally gets it. Going, man, maybe He really can forgive me, And then he goes on and does all this remarkable stuff. It's an amazing story about, how he had to go back. Oh, the ending is, I still cry when I watch it, because of all his story is remarkable.
Yeah.
And then to watch this incredible ministry that he has to prisons and just changing the world.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, man, I appreciate you hanging out with us.
You're welcome.
I want to tell you guys, check out Michael, all of his albums or CDs, I guess. What are they called now? I don't even know what to call them.
You can stream them. You can
Just
buy
check
them.
out his music.
MichaelWSmith.com. You can find us.
Yeah, and go check out also Pardoned by Grace, the recent film Michael is in. Thanks for watching.